Hello and good afternoon, everyone. I extend a very warm welcome to all of you on behalf of TechGig and welcome you all to today's panel discussion on the cloud cost trap, balancing performance, budget, and multi-cloud portability. I'm your host, Khushi, and I'm delighted to have all of you join us today. As cloud adoption reaches new heights, organizations are experiencing growing complexity, rising costs, and performance trade-offs. While multi-cloud strategies promise flexibility and resilience, they also introduce new challenges from unpredictable workloads to mounting expenses and limited portability. Today's session is designed to unpack these realities. We will explore how businesses can optimize cloud investments without compromising on agility or innovation, and how multi-cloud approaches can be made more financially and operationally sustainable. Our expert panel will share some proven frameworks for cross-governance, strategies to balance performance with budget, and architectural insights that reduce vendor lock-in, all while keeping developer experience and enterprise agility at the forefront. So get ready for an insightful discussion that addresses the real-world cloud cost traps and how to escape them. So now it's finally time to welcome our distinguished speakers for this panel discussion. Mr. Jay Jenkins, Cloud CTO at Akamai Technologies, Mr. Rubir Singh, Global CEO at Tatwik, Mr. Srinivas Reddy, Co-founder CTO at SSBA Innovations Limited, Mr. Chandra Surbhat, Chief AI and Digital Officer at SLK Global Solutions, Mr. Girish Chandan Godar, Vice President and Head Infrastructure Services at Happiest Mind Technologies, and Mr. Romesh Khattar, co-founder and CTO at DevBytes. I feel truly honored to have you all join us in today's panel discussion. So now there are some notifications for the audience that there are some resource links that you can refer to in the resources tab option. And this session is scheduled for 90 minutes. The first 60 minutes will feature insights and discussions from our guest speakers. And the final 10 minutes will be open for questionnaire. So feel free to drop your questions anytime in the Q&A window. Before we move ahead, I would like to start with a few quick poll questions for our attendees. I will be putting them up and you're welcome to vote based on your preferences. So we'll go with the first poll question. I request all the attendees to vote based on your preferences so that we can know that what is your opinion on the specific question and the specific topic that we're going to take ahead. I'll be closing the poll in a while, so fasten up so that we can know your votes and also see that what is your perspective on this particular question. All of those who are left, there are last 10 seconds to vote. After that, I'll be closing the poll. Okay, so we have received a few responses. Okay, great. So mostly people have voted for midway through migration, that their organization is at this stage in their cloud journey. Okay, great. So our speakers are now aware of the audience and they can also go and share their inputs with the audience based on these preferences of the votes. Moving forward to the next question. That where do most of your workloads currently run? Option A, single cloud, next hybrid cloud, then there's multi-cloud, or is it still evaluating the options? I request all of the attendees to vote and let us know your perspective and inputs on the same. I believe all of our speakers are also, going through this perspectives and inputs that our audience will be sharing, because our discussion will be based on your inputs only. And it will be great that we know from you about how this is going out planned about this session today. Okay, so I'll be closing the poll in the next 10 seconds. Okay. So mostly people have voted for that their workloads are currently running in the hybrid cloud platform. And we also have some votes for multi-cloud as well. Great. So moving towards the last question for the poll, we have: what percentage of your IT budget is now allocated to cloud and related services? Is it less than 20%? Is it 20 to 40%? Is it 40 to 60%? Or is it more than 60%? Let us know. I request all the attendees to quickly vote and let us know their views on the percentage of the IT budget that is allocated to cloud and the related services. Yes, so we have received some votes, and few more seconds before I close this poll as well. So we have the results, and it's a tie for less than 20% and more than 60%. So I believe that these inputs from the audience are going to help us, revisit our panel discussion and how we're going about telling them and also sharing our insights with them. And after wrapping up this poll sections, I would like to also take a moment to mention that Mr. J will be moderating today's panel discussion. And with that, I would now like to hand it over to Jay to take things forward.
Great. Thank you so much, Kushi. And thanks to all of the people who've joined our session today. It's going to be really exciting. It's an exciting time overall, but also a really challenging and difficult time. If we take a look at sort of the past few years and post-COVID and how IT budgets were reduced, and now you have this explosion of AI, it's difficult to manage all of that innovation with the operations. How do you know where to spend the money? How do you know when to use managed services or when to build it yourself? How do you know how to incorporate open source? Which cloud do you choose? Do you run the entire application in a single cloud and different applications in other clouds? Is that the best way to architect those applications? Or do you find yourself constrained by the cost models of the hyperscalers? A few years ago, when Akamai acquired Linode in order to create its own cloud, Akamai used that as an opportunity to examine how we were running our cloud. Now, Akamai is a multi-cloud organization. We have several clouds. We also work with a number of data centers around the world in order to host our applications and over 4,000 points of presence. As we took a look at what Linode was capable of, and we took a look at where we were, we understood that we drastically needed to cut our spending. Our spending was growing faster than our revenue was growing, and that is not tenable. We needed to make sure that our business and our IT spend weren't growing exponentially or linearly. We needed to be able to do more with less. So we took a look at how we were using different services. We took a look in particular at managed services that we were using because we wanted to be able to move workloads across different clouds. And if we were using a managed service, we were locked in, if not technically, then operationally, because each cloud has a very specific way of working. We went into a huge project called Project Cirrus in order to look at our clouds and see what we could do to elevate how we were using each of them. We didn't move everything away from managed services. We just looked at whether that managed services was providing the value that we expected and whether it was good for us at the time to move towards open source. During the project, we looked at open source tools deeply, and we've actually increased our investment in open source because open source implementations tend to be highly portable. So using services like Kubernetes or containerization of applications is one thing, but what about the underlying services? That's also a technical lock-in or an operational lock-in. And we knew that our business could only move as fast as our operations could move. So Project Cirrus took a look at each of the applications, and we're still multi-cloud. But by doing this, by taking a look at portability of applications, we were able to reduce our cost by 40% within the first year alone. We were also able to increase the performance of applications because during this, we were looking at cloud native architectures and automation in order to make our operations more seamless across different clouds as well. Now, I'm not saying it's not challenging. It's extremely challenging. If you're running multi-cloud implementations, you'll understand that egress costs are extremely oppressive. How do you move your data from one cloud to another in order to get the best of each of the services they have to offer? All of those things are very hard to control. And again, we're also trying to innovate at the same time, especially with things like AI. It's a lot like running and trying to tie your shoes at the same time. You want to keep up, but you also want to make sure you're doing so in a way that is operationally efficient, a way that's scalable, a way that can help you grow and keep pace with the innovation. Sometimes it's about saving costs directly, but sometimes it's about divesting in infrastructure in order to invest in new technologies like AI. So let's dive into the panel. We've got a fantastic group of leaders here who are have a wealth of experience in tackling these kinds of issues. So, Rubir, let's start with you. So, you're a very data-driven organization. How do companies like yours balance innovation and cost when you're adopting these sorts of cloud services at scale?
Yeah, thanks, Jay, for the question. I think I'll roll back to the reference you made. A similar project like Cirrus, where we, as a company, are mainly positioned to provide access to cloud as a reseller. Also, we support our customers who are already multi-cloud. The approach we take is we request them that record every program, every product they're running on cloud and its value connected to it in a data structure. And if you are supposed to have those programs or underneath data connections or instances on an orchestration, have that in a data schema and structure. We use that to move to a very strong prediction model, which reads the orchestration really, really well, absolutely growing the value of these programs and instances and costs. And then we make a pattern of that prediction and move that pattern on an automation. And then automation actually pulls the services. Sometimes we recommend them why use a dedicated instance when you can spin a spot instance, which is much cheaper to do a service, run a service which is heavy, but you run it once a month. So you run a spot instance. See, there are ways automation and predictions can save a lot of cost because there are different level of instances and cost structures available from different providers. Same service can be probably procured at one third the cost, different from a hyperscaler to a very local player. So you can orchestrate, save cost depending on a lot of factors. So we position prediction to collect all the data, value of all the services and interconnected architectures. We plot the prediction against if the cost is increasing according to the value in different services. We accordingly move the required structure, which can control the budget, control the services, depending on using different services from providers. And that is done by automation, which gives you 90-95% control over of what Jay you said. Can we have the cost reducing and do more? We do that as a SaaS, as a service. We internally test it first. But I would say, as a nutshell, the balance is have all services connected to a value structure, and you have to put sensors in all kind of a data so that the prediction model can make accurate assessments. Let the model judge the automation to control it within the range. Check the outputs if it's within the parameters, and you should be running the ship pretty balanced in a cost effective way.
Right. It's interesting. Yeah, it brings me back to sort of, whenever people were first talking about cloud, right? And they said, treat your servers like cattle and not pets. Right. And I think that the initial migration into cloud was really just lifting and shifting these applications, and therefore they didn't have this sort of operational flexibility. So you're bringing all these great data insights now into cloud cost optimization. Are there any best practices you'd recommend for somebody looking to do this in their organization?
I think the best practice is hire somebody who's an expert, who understands. No, don't just deploy a dedicated instance who probably is good to have dedicated but barely used. Simplify the structure. Bring in an expert who understands your requirement and recommends you an architecture, and also helps you leverage the latest features of AI, which also cloud providers provide. But have internal AI policy of prediction and automation. Have that orchestrated, and typically an experienced player, specialist service provider, gives the right insights, which is updated as of yesterday. And they can plot those recommendations really well. Having an in-house team who is experienced in one kind of a technology or one kind of hyperscaler, I believe it leads to an imbalance of judgment in making the right calculations. You need to have a hyperscaler and a local player, experience holder service provider who can give you a strategy. Once you deploy it, it is typically always updated up to the month. And if they have a mandate to maintain your cost within the bracket, they are constantly bringing in right prediction and automation models to balance.
Great. Yeah. So I think for our audience, a lot of them are already in sort of this multi-cloud hybrid world, and many of them are just starting their journey. So it's great advice for them. Thank you. Now we'll move on to Srinivas. So as a CTO, and if you're looking at building out these architectures or changing your architectures, how do you now prioritize these architecture decisions? Do you look at performance? Do you look at cost? Do you look at portability? What kind of decisions do you expect your teams to make?
So, just a quick background. So, we primarily help our users to file their income tax returns. I think that's also a reminder that most Indian users should be filing their returns soon. So, I think so. What happens in our case is it's a very small ticket size. So, our size of the service is very small. It's very seasonal by nature. So we've got bursts, 85% of people file their returns in the last 15 days. So we've got burst of load which happens. So mostly in our case, our architecture has to be able to scale up and scale down. And typically for this, we started with containerizing. We look at we used a lot of ECS. Then gradually we moved to serverless architecture because serverless is best suited wherever applicable, best suited for these kind of seasonal bursts. And that's what we do from an architecture perspective. Now, obviously, cost is ingrained. I think you use any of these. So I think internally as an organization, we also claim to our users, we optimize your taxes. So even within our group, we kind of cost is actually ingrained in our product development now. So when we develop products, and especially now with AI coming in, a lot of hype around these features, everyone wants to build the next chat GPT. But cost has to be very much right in the product mindset itself, that what are we building, what is the cost implication, and then design it from there. So cost gets really embedded from there, as well as from the technology and architecture perspective. So uh, cost is like the priority these days, especially as we are growing, as we grow beyond this. The second option is, uh, from a cost perspective, one other thing which we do is look at multi-cloud. Like you rightly said, when you moved also, you looked at what best can be done. Even Rubin kind of rated that. So we were AWS shop when we started. Obviously, when you're a startup, you're building, you want to get your product fit. and then you start looking at optimization. So we moved quite a bit of our pieces, some of them to managed services, some of them to even not so big cloud providers, but specialized, and they do one particular thing good. And also between the cloud, we've moved from AWS, we've moved a lot of our DRS infrastructure and a lot of our AI pieces on Google Cloud. I think try to evaluate what which one does what best kind of a thing. So we feel serverless. I think AWS does a great job. So most of those loads are on that. AI components on GCP, storage we use in multiple combinations, and some of the managed services also tends to make it easier, kind of thing. And also sometimes you don't want to build everything from scratch, especially when it comes to AI. As I said, everyone wants to build the next chat GPT. So when we started last year, we also wanted to build a tax GPT, but then we realized that there's a huge cost involved. So at some point we realized that OpenAI suits us better, and we've taken that path because it's early to at least leverage that and then go and build your own models and other things. So we did spend some time and some money on building what we thought is ideal, but we really recoiled when we started looking at the cost of running these solutions, right? So buy versus build is always a tricky decision. Uh, yeah, so I think from a cost perspective, that's where we kind of operate on.
Nice. So I think, yeah, right. So as you're bringing these AI-driven features into your product, into your organization, right, you're really taking a look at what's available out there and making sure that you're spending the money in the right place.
Yes, I think AI especially tends to be, I think, I'm sure all whoever is a CTO here will relate with me. All the stakeholders wants, to use AI everywhere kind of a thing. So it's very, I think you, right from building a product, you have to think what is the value proposition versus what is the cost involved, because these things look good on a development in, on a POC level. When you show it to the management, they look very interesting. But as you start taking these to productions and really working with a large set of data, they can be computing challenge, plus there will be cost challenge a lot, right? So I mean, what we realized, so just to give you 2 3 examples. So one interesting thing we realized during our journey was, we moved to OpenAI, and we realized that that looked better. I mean, computation wise, although there was a cost of the API, but it was still much better than that. So when we moved, we realized that we were very amazed. Users are typing questions, answers in English, Hindi, or even English, which is a combination of Hindi and English, and we are able to answer the question. But then we realized that each of this, I mean, technically it looks good. He's typing something and we are answering. But then we realized that that is a token. I'm spending on tokens for everything he types, for everything I interpret. So, and also I may love my product and start typing just to test my product, but an end user who wants to do taxation, I can vouch that anyone attending this webinar knows that anyone does tax filing in the UK. We moved into list boxes where they select options. And that turned out to be a good cost saver for us. And frankly, it also became very much more user friendly. They didn't have to type long text that, let's say, what's your source of income? And he has to type salary and this and that. And he might just come up with his own terms. Initially, we were very excited that, oh, we are able to interpret whatever he types. But then we realized that it comes at a cost. And also, it's not user friendly. So we ended up moving to a simple list box solution, and it started working much better. Yet to see the season hasn't started, but at least the early stages are good. The second thing is, where do you use AI? In what part of the user journey you use AI? So again, when we started, we said, oh, AI first. It's like mobile first, web first. Everyone started mobile first, but finally it's a hybrid world which works. So even for AI, we thought we'll start AI, we'll be AI first. Let's do everything that. But I think what happens that there are 2 fundamental problems with that. One, obviously, is the cost. Second is also, not all users are paying users. They come, they just play around with your system, and they don't even move till the point of where they start paying. So we made that decision that, okay, what we will do is a certain part of the user journey will be AI driven, and the rest of the piece will not be AI driven. And that kind of really helped us reduce the cost. Also, in a country like India, or I think in general, where the cost of workforce is much not very high, I think we should find a good balance between technology and human cost kind of a thing. So what we realized is, so we in our user journey, when a user comes, he gets his queries get answered, he makes a payment, we collect some data, and then we assign it to a tax expert. We realized that once the tax expert is assigned, if the tax expert is online in our system, the AI doesn't talk to the user. It just is a mute spectator. It basically doesn't come into the picture, and that was one more way where we reduced our cost. The third example is when it also depends where you fit in the right place. So we also have a product where we help gig professionals to file their income tax return. Big professionals are the guys who do deliveries, food deliveries, pack cab drivers, since they also come under. So we had a specific product for them, which was a complete WhatsApp-driven journey. And we started taking the same chatbot, putting there, and we realized that wow, the cost is obviously it's a very cost-effective solution because their incomes are low, so we cannot charge them what we would do to a white-collar professional. So we realized that it's getting very expensive, and then we realized that I don't think the gig professional is going to ask you a lot of taxation questions. I think his primary motivation to file income tax return early, we had realized, is how much refund am I going to get from this whole exercise of getting through this compliance issue. He's not interested in being compliant, he's more interested on refund. So we moved back to a traditional rule based chat conversation, and that's working. That they're finding it better, and our costs also are in much better shape, right? So I think it's also about what fits in where is probably important, especially when you talk about AI. And also, like, one more thing is within OpenAI also we realize that few models are more expensive, few are less. So as customers become paid customers, we start using the more expensive model. Till they are not paid customer, we use a much less expensive model. I think you keep optimizing, and we are still in that journey. I'm sure as we go till this September, which is the new due date, we'll have more iterations there.
Yeah, fantastic, Srinivas. Yeah, really good lessons there, and I think that that's a really good example of sort of like this hype around AI and everything it could do, and really sort of focusing on what it should do. And it sounds like you're doing a lot of work in taking a look at your customers' journeys, what the lifetime value of that customer is, and sort of knowing where to invest and where to to stick to the basics. Thanks, Srinivas. Now on to Girish from Happiest Minds Technologies. So you do a lot of these sort of like large scale infrastructure projects. Where do you typically see cloud costs starting to spiral, and how do you manage that?
Thanks, Jay. As a service provider, our experience is that we look at all the life cycles of an application, right? Whether it is in development phase or already operational. We see a lot of wastage in the non-prod environments, to be honest. They're not managed well. So developers have to act, and there are ways to mitigate those as well. For example, scheduling downtime for development environments or test environments, right? Those are the simple things we can do. The other one is customers over provisioning resources and not really putting in monitoring and getting alerts on time, or having a governance model in place where they end up overspending, right? And the other angle is getting into API services or egress that you mentioned when you started your discussion. Those are some of the traps that we see our customers getting into. And the right way to do it is have the right strategy in place, because the poll clearly showed that there's already hybrid cloud strategy. Most of them are there. But do you have a strategy in place so that you can implement it, execute it to get the best performance out of it, while managing the operational complexity of a hybrid cloud on the other side? And over a period of time, you reduce costs through a proper governance model, right? This is where we help customers to go about setting up a cloud center of excellence, bringing in FinOps principles. Just a few years ago, most of our customers used to struggle to understand cloud bills, different billing formats, different pricing models, and the reading a bill from one provider was very different than the other, sort of like old telephony days. I still recall trying to interpret bills. But there are initiatives such as Focus from FinOps Foundation, which helps to standardize cloud bills, and that can help you compare cost on one cloud versus the other and truly unlock the potential of a multi-cloud strategy. And then clearly we should not find ourselves through an accident, right? It has to be clearly executed strategy when we go on a hybrid or a multi-cloud journey.
Yeah, and I think with that, it is very different, operating the cloud, and I've even seen organizations, managing their cloud as if it was an on-premise infrastructure, right? They're not really thinking
Yes.
about the egress, they're not thinking about the different network costs, and they're really thinking about planning it as sort of, owning that machine.
Absolutely. And another point I may add is the operational complexity in a distributed cloud. If you are using native tools, right, you have to end up managing multiple native tools. As against a third-party tool, we can help gain visibility, and you can have a unified visibility across multiple clouds that you manage. This is one aspect of it, and having multiple skills to manage different cloud environments, that's another one. And also security compliance, because developing security policies and implementing those controls across multiple clouds can be challenging. But if you have a proper strategy, you can overcome that. That's a mantra we keep repeating, and we help our customers in their cloud journeys.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we see a lot too at Akamai. Them sort of, in particular for security, them taking their on-premise models and think it's going to work exactly the same way in cloud.
Absolutely.
So from an infrastructure services perspective, one of the things that we're passionate about at Akamai is distributed cloud, right? We always love getting content and compute as close to customers as possible and being able to, well, in Srinivas's case, right, making sure you're running the right service in the right place, as an example. Have you seen any good examples of distributed cloud helping deliver better operational efficiency?
In the initial part of the journey, from a cost perspective, no. Just because of the factors that I mentioned, right? Multiple tool sets, multiple skills, having to have a bit of an administrative overhead because you have to manage multiple cloud vendors, contracts, SLAs. But what we have seen in our customer landscape is that based on their business requirements, operational requirements, when they go on a multi-cloud journey, they will get those benefits. The benefits of those multi-cloud strategies far outweigh the operational complexity because you mitigate risk. You don't have a vendor lock-in. You may even get better resiliency out of it, and also best of breed services. You may have compute in AWS versus analytics on Google, for example. And also some of our customers who are globally distributed, they also have this multi-cloud strategy to be compliant because of the regulatory requirements, right? And some of them are better prepared for M&As as they grow inorganically. Many times they end up with the acquired entities coming in with their own multiple clouds, but they're better prepared with the integration playbook. We've seen those, but how do we actually go about mitigating this? Establish unified cost visibility using the third-party tool. You can go for a fit-for-purpose model, while cloud native tools may offer a lot of bells and whistles. You can go for a third-party tool which can look at your multiple clouds and bring that visibility to you. And also you can go about implementing a FinOps culture in your organization, which is a combination of finance and DevOps, obviously. There is a crawl, walk, run model that the foundation recommends, or whatever that works for your organization, right? Start with visibility, then assign ownership, bring cross-functional teams together so that they can collaborate and bring in best practices, whether it is business or engineering or infrastructure or security, right? They can bring their own point of views, but also best practices to help achieve a good cloud operating model.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm a strong believer, sort of like, in listening to your engineers. They probably have better insights on how to solve these specific problems
Yeah,
than you do. So that's fantastic advice.
yeah.
Great. Let's move on to Chandra. So you're the Chief AI and Digital Officer. So you have a lot of experience implementing these strategies. How is your AI strategy actually influencing your cloud architecture choices?
Thanks, Jay. I think this is a most favorite topic for every organization and every customer. Everybody wants to, the board of any organization, the CEO, the chairman, everybody wants to talk about AI. And some of the co-panelists talked about how AI needs to be well thought through, well balanced. There was a surge and wave of experimentation in AI in the last year or two. There's a statistic that only 50% odd of it actually makes it to the production. So while there is a lot of experimentation that's going on and a lot of use cases that are everybody dabbling with, there is still a concern on what AI optimal workload can actually be taken to the cloud or taken, I would say, more of less of cloud, more of production. I would say what would really make sense and what would deliver that value from an investment standpoint, and what would also comply, what would make sense from an end consumer standpoint. So there's a whole bunch of that thought process that's going on. Clearly, everybody understands what AI can provide you a huge assistance to human intelligence, an augmenting capability, an ability to be autonomous, especially with agentic AI. While all of these are real to a large extent, an AI which makes business sense, if it can influence the business transformation of an organization, just like at some point in time when digital wave was high, there was concerns around how much do you really spend on the digital experience, on the user journey mapping, on the creative, on the customer experiences. How do you derive an ROI out of it? The same construct applies to AI. How do you look at AI workloads which are fundamentally transformative in nature, which could influence the nature of the products, the services, and the core business, could be a core function of an organization, and that has a transformative effect. Now, that's the workload that everybody is looking at. If you take from a manufacturing standpoint, there's a lot of factory automation capabilities, algorithm ability to drive machine adoption in a real time through model interventions, cut down the human dependency in terms of the skilled labor who are on the shop floor, and run almost a lightless factory or a dark factory. And there's those situations. Banks have an ability now to think of AI driven compliance, regulatory, fraud detection, and every other scenarios, right? Same with the insurance, the claims, underwriting. For all of these workloads, when you think about the customer sensitive data that exists and security, to your point about security and cloud, now I'm shifting from a workload to a security and cloud. The elements of security and cloud introduces complexity. It includes a certain amount of cost, but they're absolutely important. The data security, whether you are talking about at rest or whether data is in transit, anonymizing the data, sensitive data, making sure there's a governance. There's a lot of focus on data governance, audit, and making sure that trust models are established. How do you make sure the data, to what extent it is trustworthy to be part of a model, for example? And that element of ensuring that security and controls are in place. The model security, how do you ensure the model theft doesn't happen or data poisoning doesn't happen? Those elements of how do you do that model? The endpoint security, because quite a bit of especially in the manufacturing industries, while you take the heavy workloads back to the cloud, you have to act real time at the edge to cut down the latency in those scenarios. And how do you make sure the edge is secured? And how do you make sure the data pipelines are secured, the compliance and regulatory? There is this reputational risk, compliance and regulatory risk on anything that goes wrong with data, anything that goes wrong with algorithms, in terms of biases or in terms of hallucination and whole bunch of those things. How do you then drive monitoring your logs and everything else to spot any anomalies? So there's this whole bunch of different things at play in terms of trying to think of workloads which are sort of experimentation vis-a-vis what makes sense from a production standpoint, what makes sense not just as a human assistance, which is a given, what makes sense in terms of certain amount of labor arbitrage, digital labor versus manual labor, but most importantly, what makes sense from a business transformation standpoint. And then the whole element of data model security when it comes to the cloud and edge environments.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and it's something that we think about in Akamai a lot, in particular around security. So, I think a lot of sort of the trust and safety solutions around AI are really sort of it's on the right side of security. And what I mean, it's like at the end of the pipeline, right? We do RAG models at the end. We do trust and safety around the APIs. We do trust and safety around, for Akamai we have a product, firewall for AI, but it's still at the interface level, right? It's still very close to the glass, very close to the user. So we think about a lot about sort of how do we begin that security journey to sort of shift left for AI, just as we've done for other services. And yeah, that brings us back to what you were saying before. How can we catch it like during when the data is actually being inserted into the model? How do we catch it way back then as opposed to waiting until later?
No, absolutely. So it becomes extremely important to be secure at multiple fronts, given the importance of the data that you're handling in an AI and the sensitivity of making sure that everything that the model generates is passes all the legitimate tests of a business, compliance, regulatory, and everybody.
So another one of the concerns that we've heard a lot about already in this panel are things around FinOps and cloud cost optimization. And early on, Ruby was talking about sort of being able to dynamically allocate that, so knowing sort of what infrastructure to spend on when. A lot of that has been sort of traditionally been done sort of very reactively, or has been done through very sort of rule-based implementations. How do you see AI-based solutions beginning to step into the space and actually contributing to cloud cost optimization, either by predicting workloads or managing those resources more dynamically and automatically?
No, I think it's a great point because FinOps now has become part of an extended responsibility, as you called out, because with this multitude of workloads and multi-cloud environments, having an AI solutions which will definitely give an optimal mechanisms. And some of the panelists talked about not just the FinOps could also include some of the frameworks, solutions that you in-house develop. How do you decide on the buy versus build, and how do you use an open AI, and what kind of costs that it would incur? Because there's no need to create almost it's impossible to create a chat GPT, but when you make the calls into cloud, the kind of traffic that you need to worry about with respect to the cost it incurs in addition to security. Similarly, when you start making calls into these Gen AI platforms that you tap into, what kind of cost it incurs. So the FinOps part of it, the AI led mechanism to monitor, to ensure that it is optimally utilized and optimally leveraged, is also part of what every organization needs to start building into their part of how they run the operations. Jay.
Great, thank you so much. Now on to Ramesh. You have a very different viewpoint, right? Because you're really looking at things sort of like at keeping things moving fast, right? You need to stay very agile at DevBytes. How do you approach this balancing act between cost, performance, along with fears like vendor lock-in, especially when scaling your cloud native services, for example, to Akamai?
Right. So basically, whenever we kind of start thinking about our products, features, or building out our tech pieces, we always put uh, cost first. While at the time of designing the product or the service itself, even the user experience, like earlier, Mr. Srinivas was also pointing that you need to think it ahead in time. How would your service scale? What are going to be the cost levers for you? While at the time of experimenting, when you're building AI features, for example, at the time of experimenting, you can ignore cost, but before solutioning a production environment, you need to take those things into account. And at the same time, it's like uh, it's like what you probably said at the beginning, that you are tying your shoelaces while running, and that is something that you have to be open to, and rather getting boxed into that build first or optimize first. You just have to stay agile. uh, we keep developing things, we keep building things, and then in a way, one can say that it's reactive in nature, but have a constant eye on how much the cost is increasing. So, while being reactive is a thing that people don't want to look at, it is one of those things which works best when you have to work faster on your features or application. And when we talk about vendor lock-in, we have over the past over my past 10-year journey at Newsbytes and DevBytes, we have numerously fell into that at numerous number of times. We have fell into that trap. That we have now started moving using a service, and now when a better contract or an opportunity is coming, you can't move out so easy. Um, Over the time, we realized if we start moving a little bit of workload, we start creating parallel services. That's how we ended up becoming a multi-cloud architecture rather than staying at a single cloud. And then again, using better tools as and when they become production ready. For example, Terraform was something that was probably not of that much importance in 2015, but over the time we realized, okay, now it has come up better. Let's use it. When we are talking about stability over a long-term life of a product, we always have to look at uh, to allow your application to scale slowly. Uh, so- uh, Sorry, scale fast, but change slowly. So that way, if you are stuck in vendor lock-in, building a solution when the technology is right is an option, and rather than getting scared by that and or not even thinking about it, both are not better. So you gotta play it on as we move forward.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think about a lot of architectures and think about sort of these architectures as layers, right? And there are certain layers that move slower than other layers, and if you architect it correctly, right, then those top layers can move very fast, and while your those bottom layers move slowly.
Absolutely, yeah, and that kind of gives you the opportunity uh, to essentially modify your application or improve your cost when the time is right. Because uh, otherwise you would end up making the problem a lot more complicated than it needs to be. The idea is to keep it simple.
Right. So thinking about something that's not simple, AI, right, is moving so quickly and it's so hard to keep up with. How do you do that with AI, right? It's a whole set of new cloud cost challenges. How do you adapt, your current infrastructure strategy to this new AI world?
Right. So I'll kind of go through our journey, so to speak, how we kind of tackled or managed it. So since 2018, we have been delving with AI in content space because that's where we are. At the beginning part, we would employ certain GPUs, try to train our models, and we would always do it in cloud. And some things work, some things don't. You would move on because the load was small. But later on, we realized that while building various products, our use case was a lot more on the generation or production side of things rather than the end user facing. Uh, so we were able to optimize it like that. That we would always think about doing AI workload in doing a lot of experiments, which may be expensive or not, and then slowly improve the cost optimization or optimize them for the cost or for scale. Other Meanwhile, when we started building better products which are directly consumer facing AI, wherein chatbots or NLP based engines, we realized there is a lot of repetition when it comes to end users when you're reaching out to millions of users in terms of their queries. So we started using caching more effectively. So the hardest problem in any application is understanding your caching, one of the hardest problems. And that's where we started to focus most of our efforts on how to cache it right so that you don't have to hit your cost centers that much.
Hmm.
And that's pretty much the strategy we have also started using in the Gen AI era, wherein we are trying to figure out what all things can be cached uh, as one part. The other aspect is, of course, keeping a constant tab on the costs of various LLM models and putting some sort of LLM ops in between, wherein there are proxies for model management. So that with again monitoring and observability built into them, so that we are constantly keeping a track of which service is using too much. Can I optimize it better? And keep raising those questions internally over a period of time, so that we optimize our AI tools.
Great, thanks very much. Now I'm going to ask the panelists sort of one final question. We have a lot of questions popping up in the Q&A, so thank you for everybody. And it's not too late, put more questions in. But one question, I guess, for each of you is, how do you see your own cloud and AI investments evolving over the next 12 to 18 months? And Ramesh, let's start with you. So how do you see those investments you're talking about? How is it going to change over the next year and a half?
So definitely our AI costs are increasing because our consumption is continuously increasing. We are doing a lot of content generation behind the scenes for our editors. We are also the Trap-25 app also has a bot exposed for the users, which is constantly getting queries around it. So I believe the nature of Gen AI is bringing in a lot of cost, a lot of user-centered interactions in a different way, and they will keep on raising the cost because at the end of the day, you are either using OpenAI or something similar around it. And as far as the infrastructure comes, I kind of see the infrastructure's cost keep diminishing over the life cycle of a product because you keep identifying your optimizations by nature of product management or services optimization.
Right, nice. Yeah, so it sounds like you're going through the same sort of similar journey that Srinivas already sort of went through, right? Sort of really taking a look at which services apply to what and whether it's worth the value. Like it all has value, but is that value worth the cost that you're paying?
Exactly. I totally agree there. I mean, at the end of the day, the cost is product led always, and identifying those levers at the right point of time is how we also try to operate in this scenario.
Great. Girish, what does the next 12 to 18 months look like for you?
Yeah, from an infrastructure services perspective, as a service provider, we are investing heavily in the Gen AI capability right now, and it's a buy approach. We're not going to build, right? There are enough tools out there in the market. We'll continue to build capabilities there, especially in the IT service management and IT operations management from infra perspective. Whether it is simple thing like a serviceless chatbot or creating dark knocks, right? Automating most of the workflows in your network operations or cloud operations. Right? That's one focus area. And increasingly, our partners, the technology players that we work with, they're also heavily focused on agentic AI. So that's where it is going right now. But it's very early. We are seeing, we have done many POCs, limited production right now on the Gen AI part of it in the IT ops. But agentic AI is something we are exploring, and that's where the investments will go.
Awesome, thank you. Srinivas, what's next for you?
Yeah, I think more or less what Girish said. So we are also graduating now to agentic AI. We kind of have figured part of the problem, part of the solution with Gen AI. So from a cloud perspective, both are going to increase. The AI piece as well as the overall infrastructure cost. Both will continue to increase marginally. But one thought is as we kind of start using more and more, I think you also try to optimize. And also sometimes the market also changes the pricing as more adoption happens across competitions come. You get the market has a tendency to correct itself over a period of time. So I think like cloud was at one point much more expensive than what it was probably today. And then as more and more players came, it kind of uh, gets more normalized. My sense is even the AI tools will start walking that path gradually, right? So I think the usage will increase, but I believe the cost will not increase at the same pace. So the value we get today will continue to be more, probably at a much lesser increase in the cost. That's my
Great, yeah,
take.
thanks. Yeah, I think we're all looking forward to the commoditization of some of these AI tools. Rubir, back to the beginning. So what's next for you? Next year and a half?
I think from I think that question, our lens is mainly from the perspective of the clients we service. We are seeing a pattern that yes, the infra is getting cheaper because the same token can be provided even more cheaper way from some other new provider for the same service. A little bit of quality difference until unless quality control is the priority. You can buy that token for that service cheaper right now in a secondary option. Infra is supposed to get cheaper, it is getting cheaper, but overall consumption is increasing because the trend is upwards. So it's a positive upward, I would say, cost, not like a burdensome cost. In most scenarios, the clients are happy to spend, but they, I think, are spinning faster in optimization. As Ramesh said, it's a continuous practice, but the alternates are so quickly available because the upgrade cycle in AI space is insanely fast. Just to keep up with that, I believe is one of the tasks they are right now catching up with. So I would say that within 6 to 8 months, we would see most of the tokens other than heavy duty workloads will be extremely cheap. Text is almost none to zero. And then integrated automations and prediction at a timeline of 12 to 18 months should be one third of what we have today. Because the local players in most of the countries are opening their own data center services. Like India, Reliance is taking our data center service. The
Mm,
one they go up, it's like it will be like internet innovation for India. The cloud service will be next to nothing. We might become the same trending entity a few years back in terms of highest data consumption when Reliance launched the internet service super cheap. So there will be mega players who will launch similar services in their home countries, which will just challenge the hyperscalers, and price will be insanely low. So infra is cheaper in 18 months cycle. Consumption, I believe, will be insanely picking up in a good way.
All right, fantastic. Thank you. And for Akamai, we're very focused on our distributed cloud. And as was mentioned earlier, distributed cloud and multi-cloud can be very complex to manage for AI, from a FinOps perspective, and just from a general administration perspective. I was at KubeCon last week in Tokyo. We're very big proponents of Kubernetes container services, and there's a lot of automation going on in that space. So we're really looking at taking advantage of what the community building and what the open source foundations are supporting in order to manage some of those multi-cloud implementations. So that is certainly where we're focusing. In terms of AI, for us, it is definitely taking a look at how edge and distributed can be an advantage for AI. So how do we get AI actually closer to the user, in particular for things like IoT and autonomous devices? While people tend to be very tolerant of latency, devices are not. And I think over time, especially with the rise of agentic AI, even consumers will notice the latency if we're all using centralized servers. So we're really taking a look at what that new distributed architecture is going to look like for AI. So I'd like to thank you. Thank all of our panelists. You've been amazing. You've shared a lot of fantastic insights. And now we'll take a look at some of the questions from our audience. So Kushi, back to you.
Thank you so much, Jay, for moderating the session so nicely. I believe that this has really been an insightful discussion, and I would like to extend a heartfelt thank you to all of our speakers for actually letting us go through this cloud cost trap and letting us know that how we can, balance the performance and mobility per se. So, as all of you know that there are many questions that our audience might be wanting to ask, but there are a few of them which we'll be taking up to answer. So, I would like the first question for Mr. Ruby to answer. I'll just read out the question. So the question is that how do you balance pushing innovation on the cloud, especially with new tech like AI, while still keeping costs under control?
I think that's the question of the hour and question of the month as well. Uh, I think the first approach is yes, stay connected to consultants who do this day in, day out. They have the exact strategy and updated stats about if there is a service which launched 3 weeks back, they provide some outcome and some value. You might need to spend like maybe 0.1% of your budget to test it. Always spare some budget for testing new services, because if you find advantage there in that 1% of testing budget in few new services, and you pick it quickly because it is working, you become industry grabbing or share award grabbing player in the market very quickly. So have 1% of innovation budget, park with your technology consultants who are testing your services, and they know the value and the internal requirements you already have. They can just tell you something just came out, it's working good, you should implement it, and just increase your spends there. And in the reverse of strategy, I would say a 3-month strategy right now is too long. Maybe you need to review your strategy every month. So I think if you balance these two, a 1% budget and a monthly strategy of technology review is much better to, yes, balance almost your innovation and cost quickly.
Right. I believe that this has really answered the question that our audience was looking for. And moving forward to the next one, I would like Srinivas to answer this one. So the question is that how do you balance the AI-driven innovation roadmap versus keeping cloud costs in check?
I think yes. So as we were in my part of the thing is when you draw the roadmap, one thing is you constantly look at the cost factor of it. Make it a part of your product thinking itself. Give what you're building, what is the cost of that. And then second, the kind of examples I gave, I think there are certain smaller nuances, and but they add a lot of value and bring down a lot of cost. The third, I think, is a lot of clouds now give a lot of credits, especially, I've seen like when we started moving to GCP, we got a lot of AI credits. And I think credits are great. You can innovate, but credits are like credit cards. The way credit cards end up making your personal lifestyle, financial lifestyle dangerous. So they have a due date. But yes, it does help, to kind of quickly do something, play around with the experiment. The last point I would say is ensure that it's within the culture. I mean, you start from top, but everyone in the team, right, from the product team, the tech team, including your senior management, the strategy team, you keep them aware about the cost implication, because AI is what they say is like a racing car. The more you, I mean, it's expensive. You got to be very choosy where it fits in. So I think there's that balance is the key there, and as I said, credits is a good option to do the initial POCs, without the worries of cost. But then you got to remember those that there are credits and they end on a date, so you are careful about it.
Right. Very well answered, Srinivas. And definitely, this is something that everyone is looking for in the near future. Moving forward to the next question, I would like Girish to answer this one. So the question is that how are business leaders today rethinking their multi-cloud strategies to reduce complexity while still maintaining flexibility?
All right. So the best way that we advise our customers to approach this is to have the cloud operating model that I mentioned earlier. When you have cross-functional teams coming together, they're very clear. There is a responsibility and accountability assigned to each and every one, right? So it becomes a shared accountability in the end. All the decisions are taken collaboratively. So it's a balancing act in the end, performance on one side and the cost on the other side. So you can build a model wherein you balance this out through internal and business and engineering, infrastructure, security, stakeholder management.
Right, rightly answered, Girish. Thank you so much. And for the next question, I would like Mr. Ramesh to please answer this one. So it is that what are the key factors to consider when deciding which workloads go on which cloud provider? You're on mute, Ramesh.
So that's a tricky one in a certain sense, because which workload on which cloud provider is something to answer that question. You need to understand what are the best performing things for a particular cloud provider. For example, GCP is known for its performance in Kubernetes workloads. But at the same time, AWS is extremely cheap and actually one of the most easiest to manage instances along with load balancing. So to be able to understand which cloud provider is best for what workload is something you can only learn for your application by experimenting a bit. And that's what, like rightly said, whenever you get certain credits on any platform, please go grab it, experiment your own specific use cases as soon as possible, because that's what gives you the edge and understanding of how to actually utilize a service in the right way possible.
Right, Ramesh. Thanks a lot for answering this question. And there are certain Akamai-centric questions as well, which I think Jay will have to take over too. But I'll just ask one question from all of them. So the question is that are there any built-in analytics in Akamai Connected Cloud that align with FinOps goals?
Yeah, so in terms of FinOps, right, it's a very interesting question, right? Because with different vendors, right, there's no one way to measure things. Some of them are serverless, some of them require servers, and you have different machine shapes and sizes, and it's really hard to compare across those. So inside of Akamai, we have tools to help you monitor the performance of the application. We have logs available for you to use to understand the performance. But in terms of FinOps specifically, no, we don't have anything today. What we're trying to do is work with some of the open source tools. And again, it's one of the reasons why I was at KubeCon, to find out what's going on in the space. So we're doing a lot of work with open telemetry already around the monitoring side of that, and we hope to use those same sorts of interfaces to come up with one way to measure these things around costs as well. We're also looking at partners in the space. Obviously, you have open source tools like KubeCost for Kubernetes, and internally, we're working, and I can't discuss this yet, we're working with quite a large partner that not only does FinOps and cost comparisons, but they do automation across different clouds as well. So we're interested in using that for our own purposes at Akamai, as well as partnering with them to provide those same sorts of services externally.
Right. So I believe that our audience has got the answer for this one. There's one more, that does Akamai offer recommendations or automation for workload placement based on the cost performance trade-offs?
Yeah, so this is sort of like the next step, right? So the first thing we have to get into place are the tools to measure the cost. And then from there, we hope to look at things like cost performance. Looking forward, we actually want to go beyond cost performance. We're looking at implementing a globally distributed architecture. And what we would love to be able to do is be able to sort of spin up when your customers wake up and spin down to zero when your customers go to sleep. And that requires a great deal of automation. And we want to be able to do that based on whatever it is that's important to your organization. Is it latency? Then you should be able to optimize for that. Is it cost? You should be able to optimize for that. Is it sustainability? Well, you should also be able to optimize for that. Or is it legal compliance? That's certainly going to be a consideration moving forward, especially given our current geopolitical climates, and I don't think that's going away. So we want to be able to take those 4,100 locations that we have at Akamai and be able to employ those for implementing, digital sovereignty and economic sovereignty.
Right. Thanks, Jay, for answering this one. I think these Akamai-centric questions were, of course, best answered by you. You were the right person to actually tell our audience about it. And there are some more questions, and I also think that we have the time for that. I'll just take 2 to 3 more, and any one of you can volunteer to answer. So the question is that how can organizations strike the right balance between performance, cost, and avoiding vendor lock-ins? Is there a trade-off that's worth it? So who would like to answer this one? Srinivas, would you like to go ahead? I think he's facing some network issues. Meanwhile, I would request Ruby.
Yeah, so I think now there are tools available, and I think now
Let's let him fix the network issue. Meanwhile, I'd request Ruby to please answer this question.
Could you repeat the question again?
Yeah.
I'm also receiving some lag. Yeah.
Okay. So it's how can organizations strike the right balance between performance, cost, and vendor lock-ins? Is there a trade-off that's worth it?
Trivial question. I think the first priority is to have the vendor explain you the cost structure over time. And then you need to prioritize within that cost structure which providers align to what service. I think that's where it becomes really balanced. And if you review that every, I would say, 3 months plan and review it as a check-in as every month, that should give you the right balance. A 3 month plan reviewed every month, mainly provided by a vendor up to microservices level. I think that should check out pretty good in terms of maintaining the cost and also seeing emerging technology offerings. I strongly suggest put an innovation budget to try something new, let it break. And that should be a quarterly budget. And vendors should append that in their plan, what came out new, what it is for, do we have alternates? And if 3 things are explained in that 1% innovation budget over a 90-day plan, I think that should pretty much be a good balance.
Rightly answered.
So could I just add something there? Because
Yeah,
I think Rubir has a very unique viewpoint, right? Because he's part of a company that needs to stay very agile, as actually are all of our panel speakers. And but I think it's important even for large organizations to do this. And I think that with the growth of cloud, and in particular with AI, people do get caught up in the hype of it and think about just implementing it as fast as possible, and end up moving away from the basics. You should really understand what you're building and what technical debt you're building. No matter what you're building, you're always building up technical debt, right, in that particular service. And I think for vendor lock-in services or managed services, there is great value in those services. But what you have to understand as an organization is it worth that value, number one, and what's it going to cost for me to move later? So, if something happens, if there's a geopolitical situation and you can't use that managed service because that service is only available in a certain location, what's it going to cost me to move, and how long is it going to take? What kind of downtime should I expect? And you should be doing those exercises, every sort of 90 days, reevaluating, what it is you're building, how big has it gotten, has the problem gotten any bigger, right? Because it might not be a problem to move off of managed services in the first few months, but once you have petabytes of data, that becomes a very expensive endeavor to move that now to a new service. So, I think you have to think like a startup all the time, and think about sort of what technical debt you're bringing on and what it's going to cost you to move when that day comes.
rightly answered, Jay. And definitely optimizing this while making the right decision is the most important of all. So we have one more question, that with cloud decisions often split across IT, DevOps, and finance, how do you ensure alignment on performance versus the cost priorities? So Srinivas, would you like to answer this question?
Uh, yeah. So, sorry, just repeat the question. I'm having some network issues. So,
Yeah. So the question is that with cloud decisions often split across IT, DevOps, and finance, how do you ensure alignment on performances versus the cost priorities?
yes, I think as I said, performances are depending on what kind of organizations you run. In our case, it's a seasonal business, so our performances are all towards the season. The last 15 days of the season. So in our case, at that point, the cost is not a factor, but you've got to always keep considering how you're going to optimize right from your product to when you take it to the DevOps. How the operation team looks at that right from the architecture, and keep optimizing it at every stage, because optimization cannot be you cannot do it at one stage and leave it. It's part of the whole innovation to operational to that whole cycle of exercise. So that's how it works for us. I think depending on the organization, I think that cycles may change, but I think it's all about embedding it right from starting to taking it till the end, and continuing to do it. Like what Ruby said for the previous question, is you also constantly look at, are there better tools available which are more cost effective, and start embedding them at the right time. So I think optimization is a constant process. It's almost like you do innovation, develop new features. You also keep looking at how you can optimize it, and especially in a variable uh, cost approach of cloud. I think that becomes very much a must to have. Unless the old uh, kind of fixed cost earlier and then variable was low.
Right. Thanks, Srinivas. And moving forward with the next one, Grish, would you like to answer this one? So the question is that how realistic is true cloud portability today, especially with proprietary services becoming more attractive?
Well, these are the architectural choices, right? It's when an organization goes on this journey, it's very important to align first with business strategies, right? Your architecture has to align, otherwise there's no value. You'll get into technical debt. So when we talk to our customers, what we say is, can you have an architecture which doesn't consume so many proprietary services, even though it may be quick to start up. Maybe there's some, you go there, you subscribe to something, maybe get something off the ground very quickly. That's fine, but in the long run, minimize proprietary services, have data portability, understand some of the nuances, for example, egress traffic, APIs, it's becoming ever more important. So it comes down to the type of architectural decisions, in my opinion.
Yes. Thank you so much, Girish. And moving towards the last question, I would request Ramesh to answer this one. So the question is that as cloud environments scale, how do you maintain operational efficiency without compromising on agility?
So, so as they scale, I mean, operational efficiency, maintaining operational efficiency is something that you have to build in your team as a culture. Finding out how to like, you should always be thinking about providing an optimal solution all the time. But again, it's a trade-off. Like, if you have to build the best, like most efficient system, you tend to slow down. So uh, you have to continuously keep taking those calls in a step-by-step manner, wherein build something quick. Then, but the vision should be clear that how would it scale, and at what point of time you would need to bring in the next level of optimization around it, so that your entire process stays efficient. In a certain sense, it is more of a culture problem or a cultural shift wherein uh, the product team has to understand that it takes a little bit of effort to build a more efficient product. Thereby, it will provide the right kind of understandable agility.
Right. Thank you so much, Ramesh, for this answer. I believe that all of these answers have really, cleared all the doubts that were there in the minds of our audience and of all our attendees. And I would like to thank all the speakers. I would like to thank Jay for moderating the session so nicely and actually making us, go through the topic that and also suggesting so many insights and inputs that were really required from your end, from your expertise level. And it was truly a pleasure to hear your valuable perspectives and learn from your experiences. And moving towards the end, I would like to present a slide which I would like our attendees to also refer to and scan for their reference. I'll just share it. There's some issue with the slide, but it's there in the resources tab. So there are some resource links that they're there in the resources tab for all the attendees to refer. And I believe that you all might have checked it out while I mentioned in the beginning as well. So there are some resource links that you all can also check out while we are moving towards the end of this session. So again, I would like to thank all of our speakers, esteemed speakers, and Jay, for moderating the session so nicely. And I believe that all our attendees have been really taking so many insights and inputs from your personal experiences and from your personal insights. And I believe that this has been an insightful panel discussion.
Right, and thank you, Kushi, for organizing. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Jay and Kushi. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And a big thank you as well to our wonderful participants for their enthusiastic engagement. You have really played a key role in making this session a great success. Also, this session has been recorded and the recording will soon be available on techgig.com for anyone who would like to revisit the insights that have been shared today. Thanks again, once again, to everyone for joining us. It has really been great hosting all of you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you again.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Have a
Thank
great
you,
day.
everybody.